She had surgery she didn't need, just to hear the doctor's secret. Jessica Miller took a deep breath in the waiting room, her hands trembling as she held the consultation papers. For 3 months, she had been lying about stomach pains, faking episodes that didn't exist, all to schedule a surgery she knew she didn't need. It was when she saw Dr. Michael Reynolds step out of the office that everything made sense again. That same man in a white coat with a stethoscope around his neck had saved her mother Faith's life 7 years ago. The same kind eyes, the same steady hands that had performed the procedure that brought Faith back to the family. "Jessica Miller?" called the nurse. "That's me," she replied, standing up with her heart racing. When she entered the office, Dr. Michael greeted her with his usual professional courtesy, but Jessica noticed something different in his eyes, a restlessness that hadn't been there in previous visits. "How's the pain?" he asked, reviewing the notes in her chart. "It's gotten much worse these past few days, doctor, especially at night." Jessica lied, repeating symptoms she'd researched online. Dr. Michael asked the routine questions, examined her abdomen carefully and sighed before speaking. "Jessica, based on the tests and what you've told me, I do believe surgery is necessary. Let's schedule it for next week." "That soon?" Jessica feigned surprise, but inside she was celebrating. Finally, she'd have the chance to spend more time near him, maybe uncover more about the man who had meant so much to her family. The sooner the better. An inflamed gallbladder can complicate if we wait too long. Jessica nodded, knowing she was lying to a man who dedicated his life to saving others. But her need to understand the connection she felt with him was stronger than the guilt. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The day before the surgery, Jessica arrived at the hospital 2 hours early. She wanted to observe Dr. Michael in his work environment, to understand better who this man was, the one who had become her silent obsession. While waiting in reception, pretending to read a magazine, she saw him emerge from the operating room after a procedure. His brown hair slightly disheveled, his expression tired but satisfied, like someone who had fulfilled his duty. "Dr. Michael," called a gray-haired nurse Jessica recognized as the unit supervisor. "I need to speak with you." The two stepped aside to a more private corner, but Jessica could still catch fragments of their conversation. "Are you sure you want to operate on Jessica Miller tomorrow?" the nurse asked, clear concern in her voice. "Why do you ask, Margaret?" "Michael, you know why. The last name, the resemblance. You can't operate on someone for personal reasons." Jessica's heart raced. What resemblance? What personal reasons? "Margaret, I've been a professional for 15 years. I would never mix my personal life with work," Dr. Michael replied, but his voice carried a tension Jessica had never heard before. "I've known you a long time, Michael. I know how you were after everything that happened. And now a patient with the same last name shows up? It's a coincidence, Margaret. Miller is a common last name." "A coincidence? Michael, she looks just like that photo you kept. The same eyes, the same smile. Do you think I don't notice how you act when you see her?" Dr. Michael fell silent for a few seconds, staring at the floor. Even if there were some connection, it wouldn't change anything. She needs the surgery. Does she really need it, Michael? Or do you need her to need it? Jessica felt her legs tremble. What was that story? What photo? Why was the nurse questioning the need for the surgery? "Margaret, let's end this conversation. I have other patients to attend to. Just answer me one thing. Are you absolutely certain this surgery is necessary?" Dr. Michael took a while to respond, and when he did, his voice was quieter. "The tests indicate it is." "The tests or your heart?" Jessica saw Dr. Michael walk away without answering, leaving Nurse Margaret standing in the hallway with a worried expression. That night, Jessica barely slept. The nurse's words echoed in her mind. A photo he kept? Someone she resembled? And the doubt about the necessity of the surgery left her even more distressed because deep down, she knew she had been lying about her symptoms. The next morning, Jessica arrived at the hospital for pre-op. Dr. Michael greeted her with his usual kindness, but she noticed he avoided looking her directly in the eyes. "How are you feeling?" he asked, reviewing the latest tests. A little nervous but confident. You've done hundreds of these surgeries, right? Yes, it's a routine procedure, he replied, but his voice lacked its usual assurance. Doctor, can I ask you a personal question? Dr. Michael looked up from the chart, seeming alarmed. Of course. Why did you become a doctor? He visibly relaxed at the question. I wanted to help people. My father was a doctor, and I grew up seeing the positive impact he had on patients' lives. And what was the most memorable case of your career? Dr. Michael grew thoughtful for a moment, and Jessica noticed a shadow pass over his eyes. A few years ago, I operated on a woman who was in critical condition. Her whole family was desperate, especially her daughter. It was one of the most challenging cases I've ever faced, but we managed to save her. Jessica's heart raced. Could he be talking about her mother? Did the patient recover well? She asked, trying to keep her tone casual. Yes, completely, but he hesitated. Sometimes I wonder how they're doing now, her and her family. Why didn't you stay in touch? Dr. Michael looked away again. Sometimes it's better that way, maintaining professional distance. Jessica wanted to press further, but a nurse entered the room announcing it was time to prepare for surgery. Minutes later, lying on the gurney as she was wheeled into the operating room, Jessica felt her heart pounding, not just from the anxiety of the surgery, but from the certainty that she was about to uncover something important about her family and about this doctor who had become so significant in her life. We're starting the anesthesia, said the anesthesiologist. Count backward from 10. 10, 9, 8. Jessica felt her consciousness slipping. 7, 6. Mom. Faith. Then she heard Dr. Michael exclaim, "Stop everything! Cancel the procedure!" Even under anesthesia, Jessica sensed the commotion in the operating room. Raised voices, equipment being turned off, hurried footsteps. "Michael, what's going on?" She heard Nurse Margaret's voice. "I can't go through with this. Transfer her to another hospital." "What do you mean? She's already under anesthesia." "Margaret, I can't operate on this patient. Find another surgeon somewhere else." Jessica tried to speak, tried to move, but the anesthesia still held her. She felt as if she were floating, hearing voices in the distance without being able to react. When she finally woke up, she was in a completely different room. The walls were a different color. The equipment was older. Even the smell was different. Where am I?" she asked the nurse, adjusting the IV in her arm. "At St. Joseph Hospital, dear. You were transferred last night." "Why? What happened to my surgery?" The nurse seemed uncomfortable with the question. "The doctor in charge of your case will explain everything. For now, rest." Jessica spent the rest of the day trying to understand what had happened. Why had Dr. Michael cancelled the surgery? Why had she been transferred? And most importantly, why had he reacted that way when she mentioned her mother's name? By late afternoon, a young receptionist from the original hospital appeared in her room. "Jessica Miller?" she asked quietly, glancing around as if afraid of being seen. "That's me. My name is Amy. I work at the reception desk at Holy Cross Medical Center, where you were yesterday." "What are you doing here?" Amy approached the bed and pulled a sealed envelope from her bag. "Dr. Michael asked me to give this to you. He said it was very important." Jessica took the envelope with trembling hands. "But why didn't he come himself?" "He's very shaken. I've never seen Dr. Michael like that. He said he couldn't see you anymore, but that you needed to know the truth." Amy quickly said goodbye, leaving Jessica alone with the envelope. Carefully, she opened it and found only a small piece of paper with a handwritten address. 247 Blossom Street, Crystal Springs, and below it, a date, March 15th, 1968. Jessica immediately recognized the date. It was her mother Faith's birthday. 2 days later, discharged without undergoing any surgery, Jessica decided to go to the address on the paper. Crystal Springs was about 2 hours from the capital, a small town in the countryside she had never visited. Blossom Street was a quiet road with old houses and well-kept gardens. Number 247 was a light blue single-story home with a porch full of plants and flowers. When Jessica knocked, She was greeted by a woman with completely white hair, a gentle face and curious eyes. "Good afternoon, how can I help you? Sorry to bother you. My name is Jessica Miller, and I received this address from..." She hesitated. "Someone who said I should come here." The woman studied Jessica carefully, and gradually her expression shifted from curiosity to shock. "Good heavens," she murmured, placing a hand over her chest. "Are you all right? Please come in. Come in quickly." Jessica followed the woman inside the cozy, memory-filled house. Old photos adorned the walls, and an indoor garden was visible through a large living room window. "Sit down, dear. My name is Elizabeth Reynolds." "Reynolds?" Jessica felt her heart race. "Are you related to Dr. Michael Reynolds?" Elizabeth took a deep breath. "Michael is my brother. And you look so much like someone who was very important to him many years ago." "What are you talking about?" Elizabeth stood and went to a shelf, retrieving an old photo album. Decades ago, Michael was engaged to a young woman named Faith, a beautiful, kind girl full of dreams. Jessica felt as if the world had stopped turning. "Faith, that's my mother's name." "I know, dear. The moment you appeared at my door, I knew who you were. You have her eyes, her smile, even the same way of tilting your head when you're deep in thought." Elizabeth opened the album and showed an old photo. 3 young people smiled at the camera. A dark-haired man Jessica recognized as a younger Dr. Michael, a fair-haired woman with light eyes, who was unmistakably her mother, and another man Jessica didn't recognize. "This is my brother Michael. This is Faith, your mother, and this," Elizabeth pointed to the 3rd young man, "is Robert, who later became Faith's husband and your adoptive father." Jessica took the photo with shaking hands. "I don't understand. What do you mean, adoptive father?" Elizabeth sighed again, seeming to carry the weight of decades of silence. "Honey, this is a very long and painful story. Faith and Michael were engaged, deeply in love, but something happened that tore them apart forever." "What happened?" "Faith discovered she had a serious genetic disease. Back then, there was no treatment, and she believed she would be a burden to Michael, who was just starting his medical career. One night, she simply disappeared, leaving only a note asking him to move on with his life." Jessica felt tears streaming down her face. "And my father? Robert?" "Robert was friends with both of them. He found Faith weeks later, helpless and pregnant. Even knowing the child was Michael's, he offered to marry her and raise the baby as his own." "So, Dr. Michael is your biological father, yes, but he never knew you existed." Jessica stayed silent for several minutes, trying to process everything. "Why did my mother never tell me the truth? Because she loved you both too much. She didn't want to destroy the family Robert had built with so much love, and she didn't want Michael to feel obligated to return to her because of a daughter." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. At that moment, they heard a car pulling into the garage. Elizabeth looked out the window and turned pale. "It's Michael. He wasn't supposed to be here today." "Does he come often?" "Once a month, like clockwork. Ever since Faith disappeared, he's never stopped looking for her. To this day, he still hopes she'll show up at my door." Jessica heard the front door open and Dr. Michael's familiar voice. "Elizabeth, I'm here." "Mike, we have company," Elizabeth called out, her voice trembling. When Dr. Michael entered the room and saw Jessica sitting on the couch holding the old photograph, he froze completely. "What? How did you find me?" "You left this address for me." Jessica showed him the paper. Michael turned to his sister with a look of desperation. "Elizabeth, did you tell her?" "She had the right to know, Michael, and so did you." "Know what?" Jessica stood up, still clutching the photo. "That you're my biological father? That my mother ran away pregnant because she didn't want to ruin your life? That I spent 32 years thinking Robert was my real father?" Dr. Michael sank into an armchair, running his hands over his face. "Jessica, you don't understand the situation. I searched for your mother for decades. I never stopped loving her." "Then why did you panic when I mentioned her name during anesthesia?" "Because I realized who you were. The same eyes as Faith, the same voice, even the same way you said her name. Suddenly everything made sense. The last name Miller, your appearance, how I felt strangely connected to you from our very first appointment. Elizabeth interrupted. Michael, you need to tell her the whole truth. What truth? Jessica asked. Dr. Michael stood and walked to the window, staring into the garden. Jessica, 7 years ago, I operated on a woman in critical condition. It was an extremely complex case, with little chance of success. Jessica's heart raced. My mother? Yes. When I saw her on the operating table, I recognized her immediately. Even after all those years, even with age and illness, I knew it was Faith. But she was unconscious, and I couldn't let my feelings interfere with the procedure. And after the surgery, I wanted to talk to her, to know how her life had been, if she was happy. But when I got to her room, you were there. Jessica vaguely remembered a doctor who had briefly appeared in her mother's room, but at the time she'd been too worried about her mother's recovery to pay attention. You saw I was there and left. Yes. I saw a young woman taking care of her with such tenderness, calling her Mom, and I realized Faith had built a family. I had no right to show up and disrupt your lives. But you kept following her recovery. Dr. Michael nodded. From a distance, I asked other doctors to keep me informed about her condition. When I found out she was well, I felt fulfilled. I had saved the woman I loved most in my life, even if she never knew. Jessica moved closer to him. And when I started coming to your office? At first I thought it was just a coincidence. You complained about gallbladder issues. You were a patient like any other. But with each visit, I noticed more similarities to Faith. The way you smiled, tilted your head, certain expressions. That's why Nurse Margaret was concerned. Margaret has known me for 15 years. She knew about my history with Faith and noticed how I was behaving with you. She started questioning whether I was truly impartial in evaluating your case. Elizabeth, who had been silent until then, decided to intervene. Jessica, may I ask you something? Did you really feel the pain you described to Michael? Jessica lowered her eyes, ashamed. No, I made it all up. Why? Asked Dr. Michael, surprised. Because you saved my mother, and I felt I needed to know you better. There was something about you that intrigued me, a connection I couldn't explain. So I started researching symptoms online and booked appointments. Dr. Michael fell silent for a moment, processing the information. So you never needed the surgery? No. And when I realized you had scheduled the procedure, I got scared. But I also thought it might be my last chance to understand why I felt so connected to you. Jessica, Elizabeth said softly, you may not have realized it consciously, but your heart recognized your father. At that moment, the tension in the air was palpable. Dr. Michael looked at Jessica as if seeing a ghost, while she tried to process the revelation. Dr. Michael, Dad. Jessica began, but couldn't continue. Jessica, I know this is a lot to take in. I don't expect you to see me as your father overnight. Robert was the one who raised you, who was there for every important moment of your life. But you were there too, in a different way. You were the one who saved my mother, who brought her back to me. Dr. Michael stepped closer slowly. May I hug my daughter? Jessica nodded, and the two embraced for the first time. It was a moment filled with emotion, years of involuntary separation, and a love that existed even without their knowing. Now I understand why I felt so comfortable with you, Jessica said, still holding her father. Why I trusted you so much, why I wanted to be close. And I understand why every appointment with you felt different, why I worried so much, why I wanted absolute certainty before the surgery. Elizabeth smiled through her tears. You two were like magnets, always drawn to each other without knowing why. Dr. Michael pulled back slightly to look Jessica in the eyes. I have an important question. Do you think your mother, Faith, would want to see me? Jessica hesitated. Her mother had never mentioned a past love, never seemed unhappy in her marriage to Robert. But sometimes Jessica noticed a distant look, as if she were remembering something. or someone? I don't know. She always seemed happy with Dad, Robert. But what? Sometimes I'd catch her looking at an old photo she kept in a box, a picture from when she was young. Whenever I asked about it, Mom would change the subject. Dr. Michael and Elizabeth exchanged glances. "Do you have that photo?" Elizabeth asked. "I can try to find it. But before anything else, I need to tell Dad Robert all about this. He has the right to know." "Jessica," Dr. Michael said seriously, "I don't want to cause problems in your family. Robert was the father you knew, and he deserves all your respect and love. And you are my biological father, who gave me life and saved my mother. Both of you are important to me." That afternoon, Jessica stayed at Elizabeth's house, listening to stories about her young parents. Elizabeth showed more photos, letters Michael had written to Faith but never sent, and small keepsakes he had treasured. "Your father never married," Elizabeth shared. "He had a few relationships over the years, but he could never forget Faith. And Mom, was she happy with Dad Robert? I can't speak for her, dear, but I know Robert always knew about Michael. He consciously chose to marry a woman who loved another man because he believed he could make her happy." Jessica returned home that night with her mind full of questions and her heart torn between the joy of finding her biological father and the worry of how it would affect her family. Robert was waiting for her in the living room, visibly concerned. "Jessica, where have you been? I tried calling you several times. Dad, I need to talk to you about something very important." Robert noticed the seriousness in his daughter's tone and braced himself for the worst. "Did something happen at the doctor's appointment? With your surgery?" Jessica took a deep breath. It was time to reveal the whole truth. "Dad, first I need to confess something. I lied about the gallbladder pain. I never felt any pain." Robert was confused. "Why would you do that?" "Because I wanted to get to know the doctor who saved Mom better, Dr. Michael Reynolds. There was something about him that intrigued me." At the mention of Michael Reynolds' name, Robert went completely still. "What did you say?" "Dr. Michael Reynolds. Do you know that name?" Robert slowly rose from his armchair and walked to an old cabinet in the room. From it, he pulled out a wooden box Jessica had never seen before. "Jessica, I've been waiting for this moment for 33 years. "What do you mean?" Robert opened the box and showed her some old photos. Jessica immediately recognized one. It was the same photo she had seen at Elizabeth's house with her young parents and Robert. "Dad, how do you have this photo?" "Because I always knew who Michael was. When I met your mother, she was pregnant and desperate. She told me the whole story about the doctor fiancé she had left behind." Jessica felt her legs weaken. "You always knew I wasn't your biological daughter." Robert stepped closer and took her hands. "Jessica, you have always been my daughter, biological or not. I chose to love you before you were even born." "But why did you never tell me the truth?" "Because your mother was afraid. Afraid you would look for Michael and he wouldn't claim you. Afraid you would feel rejected. And most of all, afraid of destroying the family we built with so much love." Jessica hugged Robert, crying. "You are my real father. You raised me, taught me, and were there for every moment of my life. And I always will be, Jessica. Nothing will change that. Dad, today I met Michael. He never knew I existed." Robert tensed. "How did he react?" "He was emotional. He said he never stopped loving Mom, that he searched for her for decades." Robert let out a deep sigh. "I always knew this day would come." "Are you afraid?" "I'm afraid of losing both of you. But I also know you have the right to know the whole truth." Jessica held her adoptive father's hands. "Dad, you will never lose us. You are our family. But I think Mom also has the right to know that Michael still loves her and that he met me." Robert thought for a moment. "Your mother is at your Aunt Mary's house tonight. Maybe it's better if we talk to her tomorrow, all together. All together. You, me, your mother, and Michael. It's time to lay all our cards on the table." The next morning, Jessica called Dr. Michael and invited him to her house. She explained that Robert knew everything and they wanted to talk to Faith all together. "Are you sure this is what you want?" Michael asked. "I'm sure it's what needs to be done." When Faith came home for lunch, she found Robert and Jessica waiting for her in the living room. "You two look strange. Did something happen?" Jessica glanced at Robert, who nodded encouragingly. "Mom, I need to tell you something. About my surgery, about the doctor who treated me, about some things I've discovered." "What things?" At that moment, the doorbell rang. Jessica went to answer and found Dr. Michael standing at the door, visibly nervous. "Please, come in." When Dr. Michael entered the living room and saw Faith sitting on the couch, time seemed to stop. She looked at him and turned completely pale. "Michael," she whispered. "Hello, Faith." Robert stood up and extended his hand to Michael. "Robert Miller, nice to finally meet you in person." Michael shook his hand, surprised by the warmth. "You two know each other?" Faith asked, still in shock. "Not personally," Robert replied, "but I've known who he is for over 30 years. Jessica sat beside her mother. "Mom, Dr. Michael is the doctor who saved you 7 years ago, and he's also my biological father." Faith began to cry silently. "How did you find out?" Michael stepped closer. "Faith, I never stopped looking for you. When you disappeared that night, leaving only a note, my world fell apart. I thought I was doing the right thing. You had a career ahead of you, I had an incurable illness." "Which wasn't incurable," Michael interrupted. "You left before I could explain that I was already researching treatments, that there was hope. But the doctors said..." "The doctors from 30 years ago, Faith. Medicine has come a long way since then." Robert, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Faith, when I found you that day, you were desperate and pregnant. I fell in love with you at first sight and wanted to take care of you and the baby." "Robert always knew who Jessica's father was?" Faith asked. "He always did, and he never minded. He loved me like his own daughter even before I was born," Jessica answered. Michael looked at Robert with respect. "Thank you for taking care of them, for giving Jessica the love and upbringing I wish I could have given." "You don't have to thank me. I did it because I wanted to, because they're my family." Faith stood up and walked to the window. "I don't know how to handle all of this. You have no idea how hard it was to keep this secret for so many years." "Mom," Jessica stepped closer. "Do you still love Michael?" Faith was silent for a long time. "Jessica, I love your father, Robert. He was my partner, my best friend, the man who gave me security and stability." "That's not an answer to my question." Faith looked at Michael, who waited anxiously for her response. "Some people leave a mark on our lives that we can never fully forget. Michael was my first love, the father of my daughter, the man of my youthful dreams." "And now?" Michael asked. "Now we're different people. I'm a 60-year-old woman, married, with an established life. You're a successful doctor who's dedicated his life to saving others." "Faith, I never married. I could never love anyone the way I loved you." Robert interrupted the conversation. "Michael, can I speak to you privately?" The two men stepped out onto the porch, leaving Jessica and Faith alone in the living room. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm confused, Jessica. For all these years, I built a life thinking Michael had moved on, that he was happy without me. And finding out he never stopped loving you, did that change anything?" Faith sighed. "It changed everything and nothing at the same time." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. On the porch, Robert and Michael were having a serious conversation. "Michael, I'll be direct with you. I've loved Faith for over 30 years. She's my wife, my partner, the woman of my life. I understand, and I respect that. But I also understand you two share a history, and now you have a daughter together. Robert, I didn't come here to ruin your marriage. I came because Jessica needed to know the truth about her origins. And now that she knows," Michael thought carefully before answering, "now, I'd like to be part of her life, if she wants me to, as her biological father, as a doctor, as a friend. I don't want to take your place." "What about Faith?" "I love her, I always will. But I also know she built a life with you, and I have no right to disrupt that." Robert was surprised by Michael's honesty. You know she still has feelings for you, don't you? I suspect so, but that doesn't mean she'd leave you for me. What if she wanted to? Michael looked Robert straight in the eyes. That would be her decision, not mine. Back in the living room, the two found mother and daughter speaking quietly. What were you talking about? Robert asked. About how we'll handle this situation moving forward, Faith replied. Did you come to any conclusions? Jessica was the first to answer. We decided we don't have to figure everything out today. Maybe it's better to take things slow, to get to know each other better. Jessica's right, Michael agreed. There's no rush. What matters is that the truth is out now. And where does that leave the four of us? Robert asked. Faith stood up and moved to the center of the room, looking at the three most important men in her life. It leaves us as a different kind of family, but still a family. Robert remains my husband and the father who raised Jessica. Michael is her biological father and the man who saved my life, and Jessica is our daughter, all of ours. What about us? Michael asked Faith. We'll have to figure that out with time. In the weeks that followed, the family dynamic changed completely. Michael began visiting Jessica's home regularly, getting to know the daughter he'd never met. He shared stories about his medical career, the cases he'd handled, the research he'd conducted. Jessica realized she'd inherited her biological father's interest in medicine. She'd studied nursing years ago but never practiced. Why didn't you ever work as a nurse? Michael asked during a Sunday lunch. Because I was afraid I wouldn't be good enough, afraid of making mistakes that could hurt patients. Those fears are normal. I had them too when I started. Really? Of course. Every dedicated healthcare professional fears making mistakes. That fear keeps us alert and careful. Robert, who'd been listening, chimed in. Jessica, you've always been so caring. I remember when I got sick a few years ago, you took better care of me than any professional. And when Mum recovered from surgery, you were tireless, Michael added. I saw it at the hospital even before I knew you were my daughter. Jessica smiled, feeling encouraged. Maybe I should consider going back to the field. I could help, Michael offered. I know several hospitals in need of qualified nurses. You'd do that for me? Jessica, I missed 32 years of your life. If I can help you fulfill your dreams now, it will be a privilege. Faith, who had been watching the interaction between father and daughter, smiled discreetly. It was beautiful to see how naturally they connected. But at night, when she was alone with Robert, she revealed her concerns. Don't you think Michael is getting too close? Robert asked one evening. Why do you ask that? He comes here almost every day. He's getting very involved in Jessica's life. Robert, he's her father. It's natural he'd want to make up for lost time. And you? How do you feel about his constant presence? Faith hesitated before answering. It's complicated. On one hand, I'm happy to see Jessica getting to know her biological father. On the other, sometimes I feel like I'm living in the past and the present at the same time. Robert moved closer to her in bed. Faith, you need to be honest with me. Are you still in love with him? Robert, I love you. You're my husband, my partner, the man who's been by my side for over 30 years. That doesn't answer my question. Faith sighed deeply. Some heart wounds never fully heal, but that doesn't mean I'll abandon the life we've built together. Even if he asked you to. Michael would never ask me that. He's an honorable man. But if he did? Faith stayed silent for a long time, staring at the ceiling. I don't know, Robert. I don't know. A few days later, Jessica was in Michael's office helping him organize some medical documents when she found a folder with her name on it. What's this? She asked. Michael looked over and seemed embarrassed. They're notes about you. What kind of notes? Jessica, after I found out who you were, I started writing down everything I learned about your life, as a way to make up for the lost years. Jessica opened the folder and found detailed notes about her childhood, education, relationships, and preferences. Where did you get all this? From talking with you, with your mother, with your father Robert. I also looked up some public records. Jessica felt invaded. Michael, this is a little creepy. Are you investigating me? No, it's not like that. It's just... Jessica, imagine finding out you have a 32-year-old daughter. I wanted to know every detail of the life you've lived, to understand who you've become. But this isn't healthy. You can't try to make up for 30 years in a few weeks. Michael realized he had gone too far. You're right, I'm sorry. I guess I've been obsessive. A little, yeah. Michael closed the folder and put it in a drawer. Jessica, I promise I'll slow down. It's just that having a daughter is a dream I never thought would come true. And you're a father I never thought I'd meet. But we have time. We don't have to rush. That same afternoon, Jessica decided to talk to her mother about Michael's behavior. Mom, do you think Michael is being obsessive? Why do you ask? Jessica told her about the folder with details about her life. Oh, Jessica, that's so typical of Michael. How so? When we were young, he was like that too. If he was interested in something or someone, he'd gather every possible detail. It was his way of showing he cared. But it's kind of scary. It's his way of loving. Intense, devoted, sometimes over the top. Jessica noticed a hint of affection in her mother's voice when she spoke about Michael. Mom, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you still love Michael? Faith stopped folding the clothes she was organizing. Jessica, why that question? Because I see the way you look at him, the way he looks at you. You two still love each other. Jessica. Mom, I'm an adult. I can handle the truth. Faith sat on the bed beside her daughter. Yes, Jessica. I still love Michael. I never stopped loving him. And does Dad Robert know that? He suspects, and I suspect he was never completely deluded about my feelings either. Then why do you stay married? Because love isn't just passion, Jessica. Love is also companionship, trust, shared history. Robert and I have 30 years of life together. He knows me better than anyone in the world. But if you had to choose between them, Jessica, that's a cruel question I hope I never have to answer. That night, Jessica couldn't sleep, thinking about her conversation with her mother. It was clear there was emotional tension in the house, with everyone trying to navigate complex feelings and unresolved situations. The next morning, she decided to talk to Robert. Dad, can I talk to you? Of course, sweetheart. It's about Mom and Michael. Robert sighed. I was expecting this conversation. Do you see how they still feel about each other? I do. And you? I do too. And it's making everything so complicated. Robert sat in the living room armchair. Jessica, when I married your mother, I knew she loved another man. I consciously chose to compete with a memory, with an idealized love. And do you regret it? Never. Because over these 30 years, I've earned her love too. Maybe not in the same way as Michael, but in a true and deep way. And now that Michael is back, now she has to choose between the love of her youth and the love of maturity, between passion and companionship, between what was and what is. And will you accept whatever decision she makes? Robert took a moment to answer. I'll try, because what I want most in the world is her happiness. Jessica was moved by her adoptive father's generosity. Dad, you're an incredible man. And you're a wonderful daughter, no matter who your biological father is. A few days later, an unexpected event completely changed the situation. Robert fell ill at work and was rushed to the hospital. Jessica got the call and immediately ran to the hospital, calling her mother on the way. Mom, Dad Robert is in the hospital. He had a heart problem. Oh my God, I'm on my way. At the hospital, Jessica found Robert being treated by the medical team. Ironically, Michael was on duty that day and was one of the doctors handling the case. Jessica, what happened? Michael asked when he saw her in the waiting room. Dad Robert got sick at work. They said it was his heart. Let me see what I can find out. Michael went to the ICU and spoke with the cardiologists in charge. Minutes later, he returned with news. Jessica, your father had a heart attack. It wasn't severe, but he needs care. They're already doing the necessary procedures. Will he be okay? Yes, but he'll need to change some habits and have regular checkups. Just then, Faith arrived at the hospital, frantic. "How is he? Can I see him?" "He's stable," Michael said. "The doctors said visitors will be allowed in a few minutes." Faith collapsed into a waiting room chair, crying. "I can't lose Robert. I can't." Michael approached her. "Faith, he'll be fine. It was a scare, but not serious." "Michael, I need to tell you something," Faith said, her eyes filled with tears. "These past few weeks I've been confused about my feelings. About you, about Robert, about the past." "Faith, let me finish. When I got the call about Robert being in the hospital, I felt like my world was falling apart. I realized that no matter what feelings I still have for you, Robert is my life. He's the man who's been with me through good and bad, who's supported me, who's made me happy all these years." Michael nodded in understanding. "I get it. Michael, I love you. I always will. You were my first love, the father of my daughter, an important part of my story, but my present and my future are with Robert. And I respect that. I always have." Jessica, who had overheard the conversation, approached the two. "Does this mean you've settled things?" "It means your mother made the choice she always knew she would," replied Michael. "And how do you feel about that?" Jessica asked. "Sad, but at peace, because I know she's happy." A nurse appeared in the waiting room. "Family of Mr. Robert Miller? He's ready for visitors now." The three of them walked together to the ICU room. Robert was awake, looking frail but smiling when he saw them. "How are you all?" he asked, concerned about his family even while sick. "That's what we should be asking you," Jessica said, kissing her father's forehead. "Robert," Faith held his hand, "you gave me such a terrible scare." "I'm sorry, my love, it wasn't on purpose." Michael stepped closer to the bed. "Robert, as a doctor, I can tell you you'll make a full recovery, but you'll need to follow some recommendations." "Thank you, Michael, for taking care of me and my family. It's the least I can do." Robert looked at Faith and Michael. "Did you two sort things out?" "We did," Faith replied. "I chose to stay with you, like I always knew I would." Robert smiled in relief. "And Michael, how does it feel being rejected twice by the same woman?" Michael chuckled at the joke. "This time was different. This time I understood that what matters is her happiness, not my own satisfaction." "So, are we officially a strange but functional family now?" Jessica teased. "I suppose so," the three men answered in unison. During Robert's recovery, Michael became not just Jessica's biological father, but also the family doctor. He personally oversaw Robert's treatment, recommended the best specialists, and adjusted medications. "Why are you doing all this?" Robert asked during a follow-up appointment. "Because you're important to the two women I love most in this world. Taking care of you means taking care of them." "Michael, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Don't you feel any bitterness, anger, jealousy?" Michael thought carefully before answering. "Sometimes, yes. But I also feel gratitude." "Gratitude?" "Gratitude that you took care of Faith when I couldn't, that you raised my daughter with love, that you were the man I wish I could have been for them." Robert was moved by his answer. "Michael, you're a better man than I realized. And you're a better man than I deserve." A few months later, Jessica made an important decision. She chose to return to nursing, accepting a job offer at the hospital where Michael worked. "Are you sure you want to work at the same place as me?" Michael asked. "I'm sure. I want to learn from you. I want to be as dedicated a professional as my father." "Your father's," Michael corrected. "Robert also taught you dedication and care for others." On Jessica's first day, Michael made sure to introduce her to all the colleagues. "This is Jessica Miller, our new nurse, and she's also my daughter." The staff was surprised. Michael had never mentioned having children. "It's a long story," Jessica explained, "with a happy ending." In her first few months, Jessica proved to be an exceptional nurse, blending Robert's compassion with Michael's technical precision and medical intuition. "She's the perfect mix of you two," Nurse Margaret remarked to Michael. "How so?" "She has Robert's heart and your mind." Michael smiled, proud of his daughter. "She really is special." One day, Jessica was caring for an elderly patient who had undergone complex surgery. The woman was depressed, refusing to eat or cooperate with her treatment. "Why don't you want to get better?" asked Jessica, sitting beside the bed. "What's the point? I have no one left in this world. My children live far away and my husband passed 2 years ago. Why go on?" Jessica thought of her own experience. "Ma'am, may I tell you a story? If you'd like. Until a few months ago, I thought I knew my family completely. I had a father, a mother, a peaceful life, but I discovered there was so much more to the story than I ever imagined." The patient listened closely. "I learned my biological father had never known me, that my mother had kept secrets for decades, that there were unresolved loves, unfinished stories. And how did that help you? It taught me life can always surprise us, that it's never too late to discover new things about ourselves and the people we love. You may think you have no one in this world, but perhaps you just aren't seeing clearly." The patient grew thoughtful. "Do you think I should call my children? I think you should give life a chance to surprise you." That afternoon, the patient called her children and discovered they had been planning to visit, but feared she wouldn't want to see them after so many years apart. "She made a full recovery after that," Jessica told Michael at the end of her shift. "You have a special gift for caring for people, Jessica." "I learned from the best," she replied, thinking of both Michael and Robert. A year after their initial meeting, the family had found balance. Michael was a constant but respectful presence in Jessica and Faith's lives. Robert had fully recovered from his heart attack and developed an unlikely friendship with Michael. "You know, people find our situation strange, right?" Faith remarked during a Sunday lunch. "Why?" asked Jessica. "Because it's not every day a husband, an ex-fiancé, and a daughter have lunch together every Sunday." "Maybe we should care less about what people think," Robert suggested, "and care more about what works for us," Michael added. "Exactly," Jessica agreed. "We're a different kind of family, but we're still a family." End of story. Now, tell us what you thought of this touching story. Do you believe Faith made the right choice in staying with Robert? And Michael, do you think he'll find love again? Share your honest thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoyed this story of family, love, and second chances, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more heartwarming stories.